Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Top 10 Free Tools for vSphere Management in 2011. I'd like to cover some webinar logistics. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to ask them to all the panelists through the chat window, and we'll get them answered. On the audio portion of this webinar, you have two options. You can dial into the teleconference or to listen through your computer with the audio broadcast option. Hearing us through both, you can choose to either mute your computer or hang up your phone. Today we're sponsored by Zangati. They're the two-time Best of VMworld Award winner, Virtualization Management with VI and VDI dashboards. These dashboards give you a live second-to-second view into all the actions between objects across your virtual and physical infrastructure. Next activity recorded and replayed with Zangati's unique DVR recording feature, which empowers virtualization admins to stop the blame wars whenever a performance problem hits. Enjoy our sure to download our free Zangati for vSphere software at zangati.com/free-download. Now let's turn the reins over to our presenters, David Davis and Kendrick Coleman.
Appreciate it. We want to thank everybody else for joining today. We appreciate you taking the time to come and listen to this. This is something that we gave 2 years in a row to VMworld 2010. It was rated the third highest session at VMworld 2010, and we also presented this year in Vegas at Vegas in VMworld 2011. We're going to be bringing you some new stuff that we didn't even show in Vegas. We took a lot of feedback that you guys gave us from 2010 and put our presentation for 2011. So we're going to go ahead and get going because we got a lot to cover today. Like I said, this isn't going to be a top 10 free tools, but this is probably going to be closer to maybe 20 or 30. You're probably going to get a load of tools, but hopefully you find it interesting. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat window. We'll try to answer as we go along. We're going to be chugging through information pretty fast, so we might have to wait to the end, but we will try to get to it. Get there.
My name is David Davis, for those of you who don't know me. Just a little bit of quick background on who I am. So you know who's talking today. I'm a blogger at VMwareVideos.com. I am a full-time speaker and evangelist for VMware virtualization. I started off as a customer. That's where I really got my passion for VMware and virtualization in general. A very successful consolidation project, a company I worked for, but we were a privately held company, didn't have a lot of money, and because of that, I learned to love free tools, all the free software I could get my hands on. So that's where my passion comes from, and that's who I am. And let's turn it back to Ken.
Kendrick Coleman. Like David, I have an array of certifications as well. I'm a blogger over at KendrickColeman.com. I focus anything on basically in VMware, and I started my life off as a network engineer and got my CNA, which that kind of really led me into virtualization because a lot of us would say a great vSphere admin not just a single. I think a great vSphere admin has to have a network focus, a storage focus, a server focus, and then they have to know vSphere itself. And hopefully the tools we see today are going to help kind of round out all the I guess you could say all the traits and characteristics that you already have. Currently, I'm a senior V architect over at VCE. I, of course, is not a V-block pitch at all, but this is all vSphere focused. There's no product pitches. This is just all to help everyday vSphere admins out. We'll look at some of the free tools and kind of how we came to this point. And that was the VMworld Tour because we've done this through 2010 and 2011 in Vegas and in Copenhagen. So what we're seeing is there are going to be some tools that we did show in 2010, but there's a lot more for 2011. We took feedback from 2010 and we incorporated more videos. So instead of just having to see a picture in the background, we're having to see the product in real time. Now, if you see any kind of lagging, I do apologize. Of course, it's hard to show you over a WebEx, but we did a test run and everything looked all right. If you do see lagging, just please let us know and we'll see what we can do about it. We are going to do more free tools than we did in the Vegas edition of this presentation. And really, we answered two questions when we got these tools. We want to know, does it work with vSphere 5? Because the thing about VMworld 2011 was all a big focus on vSphere 5. So if we can remember that all these free tools work with vSphere 5, I think it brings a lot more value to use it as an admin. And also, just an extra added bonus, does it work with the free ESI hypervisor? I know a lot of people are new out there, they're just starting out, and they need to learn how to start using VMware itself. So if you can find a tool that actually works with the free version, it might help a little bit more. So that's why we need more tools?
Yeah, there might be, wondering, why do I need more tools to begin with? I mean, you've got, most likely you've got vCenter, you've got the vSphere client, you can access the command line via SSH. VMware offers a number of, free tools like PowerCLI. Why would you need more tools? Well, I think of this kind of like Batman. He doesn't have just one tool on his toolbox. He's got multiple tools because there's different tools for different jobs. You never know what you're going to run into as a VMware admin. The vSphere client, let's say, might solve, 90% or 80% of what you need. But there's some gap there, where a free tool can step in and, help you out. And many companies don't have a lot of money for third-party tools, which is where I start off. So, there's a lot of different things you can do with these free tools, and, many of them just have a certain cool factor. Something that you can do that you can say, wow, that's awesome. You can show your boss or your fellow VMware admins. You also might be wondering, where do all these free tools come from? Why would somebody publish a free tool? Don't they want to make money off of their work? Well, there's a lot of different sources. Of course, VMware continues to offer more and more free tools, especially through their VMware Labs. That's a website they have called labs.vmware.com. Which over the last year has really just tremendously increased the number of free tools they offer, and we'll be talking a lot about their free tools. There are kind of developers out there who, just want to contribute to the community. Maybe they like to program or script in their free time, so they post out a free tool to get some, recognition and to help fellow VMware admins. Then there's large VMware partner companies, those big companies that have the huge booths out at the VMworld, show floor. And these companies, of course, they're not a secret about it. They want to promote their commercial products. And some do it very well, and some, don't do it quite as well. But focus on the companies that do it especially well and offer something really cool for free. Finally, there's those small startup software companies who, hope to be a large software company one day, or maybe they hope to get bought and make some money that way. But they start off by offering a free tool. We'll be talking about each of the different sources for the tools as we go through each of the tools in the presentation.
The thing to keep in mind is when we were going through all these tools, these aren't just 30 trials or any kind of hardware or something like that. I mean, these are 100% free, able to use, no time bomb expirations or anything like that. This is just something that you can use every single day without ever having to worry about pay or subscription or anything like that. So keep that in as we go along. But we'll go ahead and jump right into our first tool, which is the vSphere Plugin Wizard. And this comes from Ricky El-Kazam. Ricky is actually an engineer at Veeam. He's a blogger over at virtualizedplanet.com. And he calls this the vSphere Plugin Wizard because what it actually do is it actually puts in a plugin to your vCenter server. This is a way that you can consolidate management of your, say anything that has a web interface, if it's your SAN administration or if you have a monitoring tool that has a web interface such as vMonitor or maybe you want to put a web page inside of your client. You're going to be able to do this. We're also doing it in a personalized view or a global view, so you can personalize it for your own local vSphere client, or you can actually submit it up to the vCenter server itself, so anybody that logs in is going to be able to get this tab. Well, this is just pretty much a plain cool tool as we do it in there because there's not any other tool that does this. And 90% works for vSphere 5, and I'll tell you why, because there's a drop-down feature where you can actually put the position of the plug-in. So we'll jump into our first video, and I can show you how it's all going to work. So what I'm going to type in the web page of the plug-in on my local network. Of course, I'm going to be choosing my Synology DS411 NAS. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a description of what do I want my tab to say. And this drop-down right here, I'm going to have an inventory view of actually where I want to put the actual plugin. So if it's a SAM management tool, I could put it under my storage. If it's a monitoring tool, I can put it on the main screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it to my local desktop, and I'm going to register the plugin against the center server, but this is all done locally. To try to register the plugin, I'm going to be able to open up my vSphere client, and you're going to see that there's a new tab that's open within a vSphere client. This can be done with any web page that is accessible. So here, as you can see, I have my Synology DS411 tab that's open inside my vSphere client, and I can access my NAS right through there. So have Google in your vSphere client, or if you want to have a page you want, whether it's in your company intranet, like I said, SAM NAS, monitoring tool, it's all going in there. David, you wrote an article about this at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, or virtualizationreview.com, I wrote an article with kind of a crazy-sounding title, like Surfing the Web with the vSphere Client. I talked about, just basically how to publish like Google DOM to a tab in the vSphere Client. Now, it's not going to be a fully functional web browser because you don't have, you'll notice, a button on the top that you typically would want, like back and forward, and can't add, web browser plugins like Adobe Flash and Shockwave. But still, it's just an example of what you could do with this type of thing. You could access any, page that's on your or intranet. So it's a really cool free tool from Ricky. I applaud his contribution to the community.
Yeah, and we also have another free tool, and it's called vDisk Informer. This is it's a pretty simple tool, and basically what it does is it informs you about the virtual space on all your disks. So it'll also tell you, I know we've talked about a long time in the virtualization community about block limit with inside Windows guests. So this will actually go ahead and scan your VMware tree, and it'll bring down the space in all of your VMs so you can actually see how much space is needed. You can set a threshold to how much maybe space has been wasted. In addition, it all has a VMI call that will actually see if, say, it's Falcon 3 or an XP machine, and it'll see where the block alignment lines up, and it'll see if your disks are aligned or not. Of course, that's something that you can use to better performance. About block alignment, I'd encourage you to Google it. There's plenty of stuff out there. David, can you talk to us about the vSphere client for iPad?
Yeah, I mentioned VMware Labs earlier. Just a little background about VMware Labs before I talk about the vSphere client for iPad. The website is labs.vmware.com, and what it is a website that VMware set up for engineers to showcase their pet projects. And they call these pet projects flings. So they're just kind of temporary fun things that an engineer might work on. But they put out, to the world of VMware admins out and try in their infrastructure. They don't have any, high-quality support on these, but they do have, comments you can post with questions, and they'll probably get an answer from the engineer who created the tool. They have documentation and usually a video on each one of the different tools. To date, I think there's over 30 tools out there, and some of them, I think are very techy and very, niche tools. But tools have, wide mainstream appeal, like this vSphere client for iPad. And some of these tools, I'm sure in the future, you'll see incorporated into production VMware products. So the vSphere client for iPad actually technically is not a fling. But in order to use the vSphere client for iPad, you need something called vCenter Server Mobile or vCenter Mobile Access. So vCenter Mobile Access is basically a virtual machine you import and download from the VMware Labs website to your vSphere infrastructure. And from there, it's really like a proxy, or it's really like a mobile web browser. So this mobile web browser, you can actually do with just like any old smartphone and get a basic vSphere administrative interface. But you need that vCenter mobile access appliance in order to use the vSphere client for iPad. So you get the drift here of what the vSphere client for iPad is. I mean, it's a more simplistic version of the vSphere client on an iPad. So, of course, the bit here is you could use your iPad to administer your virtual infrastructure wherever you are, down at the beach or, wherever it might be, access anywhere to administer the virtual infrastructure. It does work with vSphere 5, and, not, like I said, 100% of the vSphere client because it's still lacking some features, that I'm sure you'll need. But it tells you basic information, tells you about the number of hosts you have, number of virtual machines, gives you information about the operating systems of each one of those virtual machines, their status, whether they're on or off. You can power them on and off. You can access performance information on the host or on the guest, information about CPU, memory, disk, network, and you can perform basic troubleshooting like ping and traceroute. Besides that, they also released a new version. Actually, I think it was yesterday, version 1.2, that if you go to the iTunes App Store, you'll find out there. It allows you to migrate a virtual machine with vMotion. So you can actually slide this virtual machine across your iPad screen from one ESXi host to another. So it's really cool, what they've done with it. You can email vMotion, errors to others, view task progress, about the steps of the vMotion that's happening, reach the vCenter host list, and now it officially supports vSphere 5.0. So I did a blog post out there about this, actually over at Train Signal Training, and you can check it out if you want. I've got a video where I show you how to download and install vCenter Server Mobile Access, and then how to connect your iPad to your vCenter Server Mobile Access virtual appliance. So one of the coolest and, the one of the flings that has the widest appeal, I think, out there. Let's talk about another fling. Let's talk about Boomerang. Kenny?
It's a new one, and I've been seeing chat, and it would really work out this way that labs.vmware.com is actually down right now. So hopefully that'll be up in a little while so you guys can go check it out. But take for our word for it. These are up there. They will work. It'll be back up at some point. But so this is actually a new fling that actually came out about, I think, 2 months before Vegas VMworld, and it's called Boomerang. And Boomerang is it's a quick way to administration without vCenter. I want to gear this towards a VDA implementation because everyone knows who your problem children are within your infrastructure, right? Bob, Sally, Joe, and Susie are the ones that are always complaining about it, or they're complaining about performance. They're complaining that their VM is slow. So what this does is it actually allows you to have a quicker administration, be able to get to the console of those teams. And it does work with vSphere 5, but it does not work with 3 ESXi. So we're going to take a look real quick to see it actually in action. What it does is this will actually bring up a small, I could say, client right here on your desktop. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my vCenter server into it. So I'm going to go ahead and add my vCenter server in and go ahead and connect to it. But when I connect to it, you have the option of actually remembering your username and password credentials. I have to remember it because I like an insecure network, and I just like being able to quickly grab everything. There's a tool by SolarWinds. It was somewhat similar to this, except what you do is you can just power on, power off a VM. To another step further by being able to do this thing with favorites. So VMs that you always need to connect to, so I can click on these gold stars and automatically be added to the top. Now, I still have my start, stop, and reset buttons, but in addition, I also have this connect button. And what this connect button will do is actually it'll just bring up a direct console connection to that actual VM itself. So I'm actually having to go to the vCenter client and open up a connection. This is the way to just go ahead and get a quick console access to the VM that you need. So if you do have those problem users with your infrastructure, it's a need to just go ahead and open up a console because you don't want to use RDP or you don't want to use, say, VNC, because if you use RDP, you're automatically going to kill their connection on the other side, because if they're not running a server instance of Windows, you can multiple connections up. In VNC, of course, there's security problems with VNC. So this is a way to get around it. I know somebody asked me, what protocol does this all run under? I couldn't tell you that for a fact, but this is a way to actually get around having to worry about VNC or RDP as a technology that actually gets to the console of users, actually having to, say, walk over to their desk. So it works great maybe in a remote environment as well, where you need to take care of users across the globe. Go on and talk about VMware Guest Console. David? Back to Boomerang for a second. I spoke in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, and Boomerang, surprisingly to me, was the tools that the team were most excited about, because they loved how you could so quickly access your virtual machines. The virtual machine administration tool that's very different from Boomerang is VMware Guest Console. And VMware Guest Console, or VGC, is actually the first tool that we talked about from VMware Labs back in 2010. We spent a lot of time talking about VGC because it was really the best tool from VMware Labs at the time. So you can see between then and now how far things have come with all the different tools that VMware Labs offers. But VMware Guest Console is still a very useful and very powerful free tool. And it doesn't focus on hosts. It only focuses on virtual machines. And it's really for mass administration of virtual machines. It provides you access to the files and processes in your virtual machines. It does work with vSphere 5, but it doesn't work with free ESXi. And we have a video here. I want to show you what you can do with Guest Console. So it's an application you install, very small. You can connect an ESXi server or a vCenter server. So here to a vCenter server, and all you get is a list of your virtual machines, not the hosts, just the virtual machines. And then on each virtual machine, if you want access to the files and the processes, you log into the guest operating system, using some credentials, your administrative credentials on a Windows box, or root credentials, let's say, on a Linux virtual machine. If you log into the virtual machines, your little user icon that you see on the left-hand side next to each of the virtual machines where you've logged in. Then here you can see a list of all the processes running on each virtual machine or all the virtual machines across the infrastructure. So this is really cool because you can sort these by the process name, and you could actually go in and you can control those processes. You can kill them. You can see how many people are running, let's say, Word.exe across the entire VMware virtual infrastructure. There's just so much you can do with this. You can create snapshots of virtual machines, and you can manage all the snapshots across the virtual infrastructure with the Snapshot Manager tab. What we're going to do here is to really test out what VGC does. We create a temporary folder on the C drive of a virtual machine, and then accessing the console here of a virtual machine through VGC. So with the File Explorer, we're actually going to take a BAT file from the local computer we're running VGC, move that BAT file to this virtual machine into the temp folder. And by the way, we could move that BAT file to multiple virtual machines all at the same time. And then moved it, we said we wanted to execute the BAT file. It actually ran the calc.exe executable. We could add in the task manager through VGC. You can go to the virtual machine desktop. We can see the calculators running. So we successfully started the process. Then we killed the process. And now go in and we can delete the file using the File Explorer here. So Kendrick had a use case where he had to run a process or a BAT file to go in and remove a set of files across all of his virtual machines, and he was able to save a ton of time by using VMware Guest Console to do it. In the bot, go ahead. Holmes, we're going to go ahead and tell that story. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so the story back when I was an admin, in the vSphere 4.1 days, and what happened was there was a bug when it was upgrading the VMware tools. So what I had to do is actually go ahead to every single guest and it's upgrading from 4.1 to update 1. I think that's what it was. And during the upgrade process of VMware tools, they would always fail. Well, there was a quick Google search to me that you actually had to go through and actually delete a binary file that was left over. Then after the binary file was deleted, I could go ahead and I could start my upgrade process. And I thought to myself, if I have, thousands of virtual machines, that's probably the most efficient way to do it. If I was a PowerShell junkie and I could script this across all my Windows VMs, that'd be great, but I'm still left maybe with my Linux VMs. And I thought to myself, VC is a perfect way to be able to do this, because what I'll do is I create a batch file that will actually be deployed from VGC onto the guest itself. The batch would run, delete the binary, and then the batch file would end up deleting itself. So in a matter of, I would say, 8 minutes, I had all of my guests done across my entire infrastructure, instead of to sit there and click and point and delete for every single one of my VMs. So it's a great tool for any sort of mass administration. And I would encourage anybody to go on YouTube and Google VMware Guest Console, and there's actually 2 videos. Each of them are 10 minutes in length that show everything that you can do with it in here. This tool is massive in the I guess you could say, the ability that it brings to you as an admin, because 20 minutes of just demoing the stuff that they can do will outweigh everything that we could show in here. If David had a question that says, is there any way to alphabetize the list of virtual machines in the VMware Guest Console? And yes, you can. As you can see at the very top here, where it's kind of like an Excel interface, you can just click those tabs at the top, and then actually put it in an alphabetized fashion. As you can see right here on this screen, how the processes are in an alphabetized fashion. Anything else to add about VGC?
Yeah, I think it's, I hope it's one of the tools that at some point is incorporated into the vSphere client, because to me it should just be part, of the vSphere client, where you can access processes and files and, everything like that inside the virtual machine. So to me, it's one of those must-have tools, for a VMware admin. It's a good tool from VMware Labs.
Cool. Look at Cloud Cleaner. Cloud Cleaner is another fling from VMware Labs. Now, if you're me and maybe you're starting to get into vCloud Director, or you have to bring up, say, vCloud Director instances all the time, take them down, do a test, POCs of them, whatever it is, this is a great tool for you to use, because what Cloud Cleaner actually does is, if you ended up having, say, you have a VCD cell or a vCenter server, or some part of the infrastructure fails, there's a lot of metadata that gets attached with inside vCloud Director to vCenter itself. And so if you actually have maybe a center instance that takes care of your lab environment plus your vCloud Director instance, this is a way to go ahead and delete everything from vCloud Director if you ended up, say, losing all your cells. So metadata that gets attached is an easy way to just clean it all up and get it to a new way. So if you end up having to a vCloud Director instance all the time, this is an easy way to clean up, to keep playing with it. I wouldn't encourage you to run a vCloud Director vCenter instance on production instance, because you need to be able to separate those and have them out. But say you have an instance in your vCloud vCenter instance as well, this is a great tool to have.
Yeah, another from VMware Labs is ESX Plot. And if you've used ESX Top, it's really one of the best command line or text-based interface performance tools, that you'll find. It gives you, in many cases, a lot more than you're able to get, a vSphere client or even in some third-party tools. So ESX Top is a great tool, but it doesn't give you any way really to graph the data. I mean, it's a text-based tool. So what you can do with ESX Plot is you can actually on ESX Top in a batch mode and then export those statistics and use them in ESX Plot. So this is like a little Windows application that's used to analyze ESX Top statistics over time. And on the bottom left-hand side there, you can kind of see that scroll up down. There's like hundreds of statistics you graph in here. really a nice tool that I demonstrated actually in my vSphere performance video training course. Let's talk about inventory snapshot.
Yeah, snapshots really kind of it's a new fling it's a new one that actually came from VMware Labs. And what to do is it's an easy way to take your dev or test environment and actually move it over to a production environment. So what you do is, say you have a cluster of hosts that's sitting in a pod to your left, and that's your Exchange 2010 test environment. What you can actually do is, and say that's in a different vCenter server, and you need to move that to a production vCenter server. Easy as actually taking a snapshot of everything that's over there and putting that snapshot over into the production vCenter server. So it's going to be hosts from the old vCenter server, register into the new vCenter server, create the same resource pools, move the VMs and everything like that. It's an easy way to move from from a dev and test vCenter server to a production vCenter server. Now, I saw two questions back on VMware Guest Console. And is it alphabetize the virtual machines in the left pane of the VMware Guest Console? And I think you're talking about where the actual list of virtual machines are, where it has the power on and power off. And you can't do it right there, but if you click on the very top where it has your virtual center instance, it's going to do a list of the virtual machines in the pane on the right, and you can alphabetize through. But there's no way to alphabetize on the left-hand side. And can we post links to where you can download VMware Guest Console? All these can be downloaded at labs.vmware.com. We had somebody said that Labs is actually down now, but you can also Google VMware Guest Console, and it'll bring you right to it.
From VMware Labs is called Project Onyx. And so Project Onyx, if you're interested in learning Power CLI, and we'll talk more about Power CLI later in this presentation, but Project Onyx is, to me, one of the best tools to help you create Power CLI scripts. So what it does is it acts like a proxy server, really, between your vSphere client and your vCenter server. So you have this little tool here, and you push play, see that little play button on the screen. And from the point that you push play, anything you do in the vSphere client will actually be shown as a script in the Project Onyx window there. So while you might not be able to, you might not know how to create a script to, let's say, and enable HM a host or something more complex like that, you can do it in the vSphere client and then see what Power CLI would have done it in Project Onyx console window here. So you could take that scripting and you could copy it and paste it into Power GUI or create your own Power CLI script. So it's a really cool free tool from VMware Labs that makes creating Power CLI scripts so much easier. A tool from VMware Labs is called vCenter XVP Manager. And XVP Manager should probably be called vCenter Hyper-V Manager, because really what it does, it allows you to perform basic administration of Hyper-V servers from your vSphere or your vCenter server. So they're not going; those Hyper-V servers aren't going to be really equals or peers to your EXI hosts in terms of what you can do with them. But you can perform basic administration from on, off, check their hardware information, and then also, and probably more importantly, see the virtual machines that are running on those Hyper-V servers, and then perform basic administration on those virtual machines. And my feel is that VMware didn't really create this to allow you to manage Hyper-V machines and servers, for the long term. They created it because they hope that you can use this to gain insight into which machines are running into Hyper-V, and then perform a V2V conversion of those virtual machines from Hyper-V into vSphere. It's very obvious in here. When you click on a virtual machine, there's a big button that says, convert to vSphere, and it integrates with VMware's converter. It actually makes conversion of Hyper-V virtual machines very easy. So it's a cool tool from, again, VMware Labs.
We're going to talk about our first, I could say, almost a commercial product. and that comes from Veeam, and they have a commercial product called Veeam Monitor, but they also have a free product called Veeam Monitor, and it's essentially the same, but some of the features are dissolved down a little bit. So one thing that I like about Veeam Monitor is that it has, say, a top X for quicker problem solving, and we're going to show you that in a video. And they just had the latest release. It's completely working with vSphere 5, and it also does work with free ESXi. So this is an easy way for you to start getting your hands on a free VMware tool. So we're going to take a quick video and see what it looks like. And as you can see, I added my entire infrastructure in here, and as you can see at the very top, there's these summary tabs. Now, every single object within here, whether it's a cluster, a host, a resource pool, or VM, have these tabs at the top. So as you can see, I can go over and I can see my CPU, my memory, my disk. I can get this swapping going on. I can see what, say, the data stores are going on. And this is my favorite one, is I like this top VMs view, because what I can do is I can say maybe the top 10 VMs within my infrastructure that are using the most CPU, or that have the most network usage, or maybe swapping, because swapping is a bad thing. So when you see that top view, it's better than just what I could get when I'm inside the vSphere client, because I can just see everything at my fingertips. And go down in the host, and as you can see, I have all those tabs at the top still. I can be in a sort of red, yellow, green fashion, sort of a stoplight approach of what my resources actually look like. So I actually see the same exact thing when I drill down to the VM itself. I can see the CPU, I can see the memory, I can see its network usage. This is something how it also integrated into VGC. As you can see, I can see the processes running on a VM, but you really don't want to do it through here, because the version won't allow you to actually see the actual process that's picking up power. So you probably want to use it through here, because if you in the process, you can't really see what you're killing. So that's sort of where they want you to pay for an upgraded version. But it's a very good tool for anybody that's very new to vSphere to try to get that overarching view of everything in your environment. There's a wide array of other free tools that David will go through for us.
I think Veeam Monitor is a great free tool that you could put on, like, say, a 32-inch monitor or whatever in the data center, and have your pretty graphs, showing the real-time performance, of the virtual infrastructure, and again, do it all for free. But Veeam's got a lot of other free tools. They also have Veeam Reporter, which is a great documentation tool. You can go in and, kind of like a Crystal Reports, let's say, for VMware. You can go in and create all these custom reports and see, how many hosts, how many virtual machines you have, all their different configurations. You could store them, you could export them. There's a lot you can do with that. Of course, there's a commercial version of that, too, that offers more. Then the Veeam Fast SCP. Fast SCP was actually the first tool that Veeam ever offered. And really what it is an SCP client to allow you to transfer files back and forth from your local Windows desktop to an ESXi server. So, that's one of the first things that when you're, let's say, a new VMware admin, you'll want to do, most likely, is to transfer ISO, let's say, of Windows 7 or Windows Server up to a host so that you can create your virtual machine from that. It's a lot faster way if the ISO is up on the host. Or maybe you want to create a virtual machine and download it to your local computer to have a backup. There's a lot of different ways that you'll need to use an SCP client as a VMware admin. So SCP is a great free tool from Veeam. Veeam Business View is a web-based tool that allows you to map or organize your virtual infrastructure, how your business is organized. In other words, you could put all the HR ESXi hosts in one group and all the marketing hosts in another group, and you could run reports based on those groupings. So if you want to, let's say, in Veeam Reporter or in Veeam Monitor, report a performance report for all the HR virtual machines or all the HR hosts, you can do that. So Veeam Business View in itself doesn't provide you information. It provides the mapping that these other tools like Veeam Reporter, Monitor, and their commercial backup tool all use. And Veeam has done something that I think is very generous, and I try to get the word out as much as I can about. They've been free licenses for the commercial version of Veeam Monitor and Veeam Backup for free to anyone who is their VCP, their VMware Certified Professional, you can get, I believe it's a 2-socket license of Veeam Backup and a 2-socket license of VMware free to use unlimited in your home lab. And you can just Google free, Veeam lab license or something like that, or I can post the URL if you can't find it. But I think it's a very generous offer from Veeam, and I try to support whenever I can. So you can use their commercial tools, indefinitely. And what we want to talk about here is RV Tools. And RV Tools is really the first tool from an independent software developer. I talked about, the different sources of VMware tools. And this tool actually comes from a guy, and I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his last name, but it's Rob De Vey, I guess. And I think that's where the RV comes from in RV Tools. His website is robware.net, and this is really a reporting and inventory tool. So local tool runs on your Windows desktop, very small tool, you install it, and you connect it to an ESXi host or to your vCenter server. And the first time you pull it up, it downloads a ton of data, but it only takes a few seconds to pull down all this data about your virtual infrastructure. And when I first saw it, I said, wow, it's like tab heaven. There's like a tab for every type of, resource in the virtual infrastructure. From there, it's almost like Excel, where you can easily sort and filter that data. It also has killer exports to Excel. Most of it works with vSphere 5, and it does work with free ESXi. So let's check out a video on it. I think it's a great tool for especially documentation. Say you're a consultant or you want to document your virtual infrastructure for disaster recovery. This is what you get. So you can see here there's a tab across the top starting the info, a tab about all the different virtual machines here, DNS name, power state, how many vCPUs they have, how much memory, disk, network, the list goes on, and then you can sort each one of those lists. So, you want to find out the virtual machine that has the most configured RAM, we'll sort it, and you'll see on the top. You can see different network, of network adapters, their fault tolerance state, a lot of information, about every virtual machine in the virtual infrastructure. You see the path actually to the VMX configuration file, amount of even performance data, like the amount of memory that's in use, and then any notes that you placed on those virtual machines. Then move over on the tabs here, and you can see information about vCPUs. They saw how many VPUs were configured on each of the virtual machines, and we sorted by that. We information about the amount of memory, not just configured memory even, but consumed memory, the amount of memory that's actually in use at the time that this data was taken. Now, it won't update. If you leave this, up, it's not going to continually pull down data from vCenter about performance, more of a snapshot, in time. So go across the top here, you see information about virtual disks, virtual networks, adapter types. You want to find out how many virtual machines have a certain type of virtual network adapter, information about all the snapshots, information about VMware tools, which virtual machine has out-of-date VMware tools, information about hosts. Of course, you can sort all this, which host has the most memory, which host has the most CPU cores, which host was booted, most recently, the version of ESXi, virtual machine CD, which virtual machine has a connected, virtual CD DVD drive. To store information here, you can sort by the amount of capacity on a data store, even, health of the virtual infrastructure. And then, as I mentioned, you can export all this data very quickly out into Excel. So just ran a report here. We exported everything into Excel, and now you have, all the same type of information, but in just the giant Excel spreadsheet with different tabs. So it's a very powerful documentation and reporting tool, 100% for free.
When we look at something like this, as people are always asking, need an inventory snapshot of what actually everything looks like, this is a way to give it to them in 10 seconds or less. But now to look at something that comes from other, say, a commercial provider, and this is from VM Turbo. Now, last VM Turbo had a weird array of free products they offered. They had VM Turbo Watchdog, they had VM Turbo Monitor, and VM Turbo Reporter. So they kind of thought their strategy, and instead of having all these different products, they just combined it in one. And they actually took all their products and they said one, so there's actually 3 different versions of their single commercial product. You have the cloud version, their enterprise version, and of course their community edition, which we're going to talk about, which is their completely free edition. This is basically a monitoring and reporting tool. It actually helps you do problem detection. What not a lot of tools actually do is it will actually tell you, this is where your problems, this is where the problem is. Say you have a VM that is constantly with the exclamation point on your memory. Well, this is going to be able to tell you where it's at. It's not going to tell you the resolution to say you need to turn it down to, say, take your ovation off or something like that, but it's actually going to tell you where the problems exist. We have a ton of reports we're going to take a look at, and it's capacity and performance alerting, and it's really great. It also does work with vSphere 5, and it does work with FreeSXI. What the dashboard looks like, and it sort of has that, that stoplight approach where it's kind of red, green, and yellow, but it also throws in a blue in there to try to bring it some more levels of, I guess you could say, clarity. And everything you highlight over shows a percentage of utilization or percentage of storage. And you can drill down into these graphs, and you can actually do a timeline. So if you want to see what something looked like 14 hours ago or 10 days ago, you can do that. And as you can see, I can go down to my host, and I can drill down, and I can see ESX top statistics. Another thing I like about their graphs is that if you have a lot of VMs on a particular host, those graphs are going to be very consolidated and they're going to be very tiny next to each other. But what you can actually do is you can highlight, drag your mouse, say, across a bar that you see really high, and it'll actually zoom in on that particular VM. You can drill down into the VM itself, so you can drill down into the host. You can actually see what VMs are on that host, and drill down even further to even see the storage on that VM or the storage that's allocated to that host. As you see right here, we're looking at the percentage of MEM and CPU that's actually assigned from ESX top to particular VMs. And what we're going to actually look down into the VM itself, and we can see data store utilization. We see any actions that need to be taken if there's any kind of problems that need to be taken care of as well. We drill down into the storage. So if you want to drill into the storage, you can actually see what VMs are allocated on that storage. As you can see in this right here, we can see what ESX hosts actually have access to that storage. You get statistics on storage. So if you need to see what sort of I/O or latency statistics coming from the storage, it's an easy way to be able to see that as well. And this is a lot of stuff to have in a free version of a product because it doesn't just do a single host. It doesn't do a limited amount of VMs. The VM Monitor can only look at, say, maybe your top 10 or top 20 VMs. But VM Turbo actually takes in your whole entire vCenter instance. It doesn't matter how many, you can have up to 1,000 virtual machines in there, and that's fine. And now we can see is you can actually see that, I guess you get an orange button next to a VM because it's on VM, and I can actually run up to 30 reports against it. And we're going to look at the storage access for for this particular for these particular data stores. So with data store, you can see how many ops each one of them are pushing. And say an admin, say it's a SQL DBA that is always complaining because he wants to know statistics about his VM. Well, this is an easy way to actually give him the statistics he needs because let's go to that individual VM and you click on a report. This actually generate a 9-page report for the individual VM. So you can see what the CPU utilization looked like, the memory utilization, its I/O, its throughput, its latency, everything like that prior day. You can actually subscribe to these reports so you don't actually have to push them out all the time. So you can be emailed to them on the fly. It's a very powerful tool, and it's all free. Extra. Oh, sorry, David.
Because I really like how VM Turbo imports as a virtual appliance too. So you don't have to install, a Windows OS or burn a license just to use it. You just download the virtual appliance and import it, and you're good to go. So yeah, it offers so much for a free tool. It's very impressive. So move on. Let's talk about Extrovert. So Extrovert is a website. It's a group of guys out of the UK, extrovert.com, and they have a lot of great white papers and how-to articles. It's a really high-quality website. And a number of their free tools are, they're very small, but they're also very useful. So one that I like is Extrovert vAlarm. And it's a monitoring tool. Basically, all it does is it gives you a desktop alarm, like a balloon pop-up, anytime there's an alarm in the virtual infrastructure. So, in a stock, vSphere infrastructure, you've got, I don't know how many, 30 to 50 different alarms that are created in there by default, and they're useful alarms. But the problem with them is that there's no alarm action by default. You're just going to get a message if you happen to be inside the vSphere client at the time, you'll get an alarm in the vSphere client. But if you're not in the vSphere client, then you know that there's a problem in the virtual infrastructure. So with Extrovert Alarm, any alarm that happens in the virtual infrastructure, you'll get a balloon pop-up here on your Windows desktop. So this is an example of a test alarm I created. I clicked on the balloon, and then this pops up. It tells me the type of alarm that happened, in this case about a data store, and there was an alert about, free space on the data store. So just a very tiny, small tool, from Extrovert. And they've got other tools like this. Let's move on and let's talk about the RDP plugin. So the RDP plugin, again, is tiny, 1.9 megabytes. And when you install it on your local Windows desktop, it just gives you a connect to a virtual machine via RDP option on every virtual machine in the virtual infrastructure. If you right-click on that virtual machine, you can connect to RDP just by clicking that option. So it just brings up the local Windows Remote desktop, and then you can type in your credentials and you're connected. So, something that might save you a few seconds of time, but, over a year of use, those free seconds can really add up. It has a lot of other free tools and white papers. I encourage you to check out their website. So let's move on and talk about our sponsor, Zangati. Kenny?
Zangati is probably one of the coolest products we're going to look at today because they have each, and they have, I guess you could say, characteristics that no other product talks about. They push this performance health engine, and this is something that is sort of the generation of monitoring tools because everything's not based on a threshold anymore. What's great about Zangati's performance health engine is what it'll do is it'll take a baseline of what your infrastructure looks like today, and if it ever deviates from that infrastructure, you're going to get a percent that drops down from, say, 100 to 95 to 90 to 80, so you can see there's something that's going wrong. It has a DR-like monitoring feature that we're going to look at. Now, their free version works with a single host. Now, there's nothing that you can't run the free version on all hosts in your infrastructure. But if you do a consolidated view of all your hosts, that's for the paid product. But their version also has this top talkers concept where you can see the top 10 VMs inside of the infrastructure. It does work with vSphere 5 and does work with free ESXi. And really, what Zangati, they take a unique approach to it because they come from a strong networking background. So in the C in here, there's going to be a lot of networking statistics that flow here. Now, one thing that's great about Zangati is it's actually very pretty because, as you can see, sort of a real-time flow. It's about maybe 30 to 45-second delay of the actual packets that are actually going in and out of your virtual infrastructure. And all, as you can see, on a free version. And looking at right here is the VDI dashboard. So it's going to have a lot of different things, say, for PCOIP, so you can actually see the bit rate of what it's talking at. If you have a bunch of viewings going on, you can see a lot of fun here between the VDI and the VI dashboard, sort of the same, where you can see storage latency, you can see write latency. And if you look at the very top, you can see the VDI Health Index dashboard. As my infrastructure is at 100, and that's where I like to keep it, and I'm sure most everybody does. So this is a great thing to just have running in the background. So in case you have something that ever deviates, you're going to know about it. And that's right there at their DVR-like monitoring tool. So what you can do is actually, when it's playing in real time, you can fast forward and you can actually rewind, and you can see spikes within any graph, so you can figure out and troubleshoot of where anything's at. I also took a recording. So say a problem goes on between 2 and 3 a.m., I'm going to be at night waiting to 2 a.m. to see maybe it's a back spike that's causing contention on the network. Well, instead of doing that, I can just set up a recording to run from 2 to 3 a.m. I can go and I can view it the next day, and I can actually see maybe where the spikes happen, and I can just fast forward there in real time and not have to worry about sitting there the whole time. And that all comes with the free version too. Now, the VI dashboard is kind of the same as the VDI dashboard. You just have different ways that you can customize it. And this is the actual Zangati, the classic interface for it. And all three of the interfaces actually come with the free version. So it's an easy way to get used to all of them, and you can actually take them all for a test ride if you want to. It's sort of where the top 10 talkers notion comes in, where I can see the top 10 identities by network bit rate for whatever's being pushed out. I can see the top 10 people that are using CPU, and all of these can actually be customized from my dashboard. So if you want to see something for storage instead of memory or anything else, that's an easy way to change it. And every single view is, you can do monitoring, you can do recordings, you can set up profiles. You also actually have trouble tickets submitted through here. And this is actually how I can show you that you can actually say remove the type of dashboard to actually put in a new one, and it'll just change the view for you real quick. And it kind of comes in that real-time view. So it's an easy way to have an overall view of dashboard of your infrastructure, and everyone comes with that DVR-like monitoring, so you can go fast forward and reverse during your day, or you can set up those recordings, and that's all free in their free version.
You asked me about Zangati and how it differs from the other tools. There's four things I try to point out. First off, like Kenny said, is the DVR back, where you can go back in time and see what's been happening across the virtual infrastructure, because many problems you find out about have already disappeared. They've already happened, and it's hard to go back in time and solve problems like that without that DVR-like scrolling. Is that you import it as a virtual machine appliance. And third is that network insight, where you can actually see the types of traffic traversing the virtual network. Who's talking to who and what protocol are they talking? And that's something you won't get in the vSphere client, because it doesn't have insight into net flow data going across the virtual infrastructure. And finally, fourth, that it's free for one host. And you can install that free version on every single of your hosts, manage them individually, and still do all that for free. And then recently they had a big new release. Kenny, you want to talk about that?
Yes, and it was really focused on data store, because a lot of problems within a virtual infrastructure actually come from storage latency, or it comes from problems in the storage backend. So they had a great focus, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to see latency. Say if you have multiple paths to your storage, and so you have some sort of round robin setup, and you experience problems, well, you can actually see which link or which route actually has the most latency. It also has support for NFS, and it actually even further and put a WMI integration for Windows, so you can see processes that are actually being taken up on a Windows machine. It also brought in CPU ready and memory ballooning statistics from ESX Top. So great new release. I encourage everyone to go check it out when you have time.
The WMI integration, so you can see the processes. I mean, because the traditional, say with just a vSphere client, you can see that a particular virtual machine is in the network a lot, and about all you get. This Zangati, the previous version, you can see that virtual machine is talking, let's say, a lot of HTTP traffic out to an internet address, for example. But with the WMI integration, you could see, it's actually let's say a multiplayer game, and the process name of that game running on the virtual machine that's actually creating that traffic. So it finally takes it all the way down to the process level. So let's talk about vKernel. vKernel is one of the large commercial software vendors out there that is very focused on performance and capacity management. And the first tool from them I want to talk about is vScope. And vScope is actually a tool they just released, and it's a virtual machine that you import into your virtual infrastructure. They access it via a web browser interface, and this is what it looks like. it gives you high-level monitoring of the virtual infrastructure at the host and virtual machine level. So basically, the virtual machines green and the hosts that are green don't have any problems. And on top of that, you'll have yellow virtual machines that host that have some problem that's going to be occurring in the future, and then finally red virtual machines that have a problem that's occurring right now. And if you mouse over each one of those, you'll get information about the particular problem. So it's good for virtual machine right sizing, and it does work with vSphere 5. And then vCurrent got other free tools, actually quite a few other free tools: application view, storage view, capacity modeler, and search my VM. And the graphic here you see is actually storage view, just a Windows tool that tells you whether your data stores are experiencing latency or what the latency is on each of your data stores. So I think it's a very useful free tool. Same thing with capacity view, gives you a quick overview of how many more virtual machines can you add to the virtual infrastructure at the current rate. There's capacity modeler, which will allow you to model, what-if scenarios, like what if I added 2 more Dell servers with 32 gigs of RAM to my virtual infrastructure? How many more virtual machines can I add? Search my virtual machine, search my VM gives you a Google-like interface via a virtual appliance for your virtual infrastructure. A lot of cool free tools are available from the kernel. With that, let's talk about Power GUI.
And Power GUI, this is probably one of the most, like you can see, it's the big one because it integrates 3 different products into one. It talks about Power GUI, Power CLI, and the vSphere Community Power Pack. And there's websites to get all this together. And there's plenty of walkthroughs on websites about how you integrate this, but it's actually, it gives anybody from a beginner to advanced level really in-depth capabilities into vSphere. So you can do administration, you can do reporting. And as we say, this is sort of going to be the future of administration because a lot of stuff has to be done on a mass scale. And vSphere client's not really tailored for that. So if you can script it, because as Hal Rottenberg on a vSphere training, a train signal training video, he said if you can, good administrators are lazy. So if you can script it, it's the best way that you can get it done. 20% works with vSphere 5 because Power GUI is actually a product from Quest Software, and it's something that is always being developed. But we're going to do a quick, dirty version of everything you can do in here. And I can add my host in here. It can be multiple vSphere servers, multiple hosts. And when I get in here, I can see snapshots, I can see folders, I can see my cluster view, I can see all the virtual machines in here. Kind of think of it the way that we could do with VGC, but we can actually do a lot more in here than we could with VGC. I can take a snapshot, I can add a new CD, I can start, stop, suspend a VM, I can delete a VM, I can unit actually, I can storage demotion it, I can really move all back and forth. So as you can, I'm going to take a quick snapshot, and then it's going to show up inside the vSphere instance. But there's stuff that you can do with it. You can look into the host view. So it actually grabs everything from a virtualized and a physical, you could say, infrastructure view. And I can everything that's running. All these tabs at the top are easily configurable, so I can see the views, however it's tailored to me. I can actually run reports. I can see, I want to see all the data stores that are in a certain cluster on this host. I can run a report to see that. And so we're going to be running a virtual machine report for a particular host. And I can see all the different characteristics of those VMs on this particular host. And what I actually do is I'll fast forward a little bit, and we'll get into the vSphere Community Power Pack. And Power Pack is actually a way that it's just something that comes from people like Anu, from Luke Deckens, who give time to actually create these scripts. And so you can see CPU type on the host. You can see if change tracking is actually enabled on the VMs. You can see the VMware the virtual machine hardware version. There's actually a lot of different things you can do. I think it's over 300 different scripts in here that you can actually run. With GUI, like I said, it's from beginner to advanced. It has a script editor, so any sort of if you want to start learning, it has all the console commands in there, so you can start learning. In addition, you can actually right-click on any command, and you can actually see what it looks like to actually run that script. So you can actually tailor fit it to your environment as well. There's a lot of things you can do in here. You can even export all your VMs to Visio, creating a V diagram. So there's a lot of cool things you can actually do with that. I encourage you to check it out because PowerCI is definitely going to be that link into the future of the way administration is going to start going. We're going to do a few little bonus tools real quick. This is something from William Lamb. He calls this the vGhetto script repository. And basically, he creates scripts in Perl that will allow you to do different things in vSphere that maybe are paid-for features, such as host profiles. He has a thing called host profiles that will actually, because that's only available in Enterprise Plus version, he actually has a script that will actually take a template of a host and apply that to the rest of the host. My favorite one from him is the vSphere hard guide. So what he will do is you can actually run it against your vCenter server and all your hosts and all your, just all your hosts. It will actually analyze that against the requirements that are in the vSphere 4.1, and he will end up making it for the vSphere 5 against the hardening guide for it. And you can see maybe where some tools have been opened in your infrastructure that you can go ahead and close down. He's constantly updating these, so go ahead and check it out for any sort of updates. Myself, a little plug here. This is something called what I call the VM Advanced ISO. This is something for, I would say, advanced administration. It's an easy way just to have advanced machine utilities at your desktop. So a way to load ISO to a VM, and you can do P2P cleanups. You can toggle how, and it's also a way to start looking at partition alignment, as we talked about a little bit earlier. We talked about reclaiming space with thin provision. Every node thin provision is awesome, but there's a lot of white space that's left over when you delete files. And sdelete is actually a program from Microsoft that you can delete that white space and actually claim that space back to give it out. There's also sysprep files for when you have to create a new vCenter server, so you can just load that on there and put those on there. It has the vSphere client on there, which is actually FinApp from the lab, which we talked about here. So I keep adding new stuff to these when I find that you could really need vSphere admin, so go chat at your leisure as well. This is another bonus that we put in here, which is called VMware Scanner, and this comes from Rich Arstig, and he runs runvirtual.com. And what it will do is you can actually put in a set of IP addresses, and it will go and it will scan for ESX servers. And he said you would be surprised to see how many public ESXi servers are just out there. You can put in public addresses, and what it'll do is he kind of found a flaw within vSphere itself, is you can actually make an API call to a vSphere host without actually having to use credentials, and it'll tell you what version of vSphere it's running. So it's just a cool tool that you can use against your infrastructure. You talk about the backup from thinware?
Yeah, this is a tool I found out about at actually VMworld 2011. This is just an independent developer out of Dallas, Texas, and in his spare time, he's created basically it's a graphical interface for VC or VMware Consolidated Backup. And so today you have to install VMware's VCB, which is the older version of backup interface that you would use to connect to a vSphere server. But still, it gives you a graphical interface that you can use to do backups of your virtual infrastructure. Today, it doesn't have a scheduler, so it has a number of downsides today. But again, it is a completely free backup tool for vSphere. And he's working on another version right now that's going to use VADP or the vSphere API for data protection and offer a lot more features, in the future. So it's something I'm going to stay tuned back out. But if you find someone who says, hey, I need a completely free backup tool for vSphere or ESXi, it's an option. Another way.
Oh, go.
I'm going to summarize the key takeaways from our presentation. First off, free tools are everywhere. There's so many free tools out there. Kendrick's list of over 50 free vSphere tools can be found at his blog. All the tools we talked about here, plus a lot more. You can also, make your life easier as a VMware admin by using these tools. Not only easier, but even more fun. And finally, make sure that you support the developers of these tools. So there's a lot of just independent guys out there, and there's the large companies like Veeam and Zangati and vKernel, who offer quality free tools. And if you like that tool and use it in your production infrastructure, at some point you'll want to, or you'll be able to purchase it. So we enjoy getting the word out about these free tools. We feel passionate about them, and I hope that you do too. Check out our blogs and feel free to email or contact us if you have any questions about these tools. Any final words?
Yeah, thank you for everybody coming today. Thank you to Zangotti for sponsoring this. Zangotti has actually recorded the WebEx, so if you did join, you will get a recorded WebEx. I know people have been asking for the actual slide deck. The VMworld 2011 slide deck can be downloaded from both David and my website, so you can just go there and search for VMworld, and I'm sure it'll come up. We appreciate everybody, and we really appreciate Zangotti for sponsoring this WebEx. It's been fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed and got some great information out of it.
Thanks for your support.